how would you prioritize self-care in your life, and what does that look like for you?
For sure. Self-care is definitely important, something we should all be talking about. And self-care for me, I kind of divide it in a couple ways, but like I think I always focus on things that keep me alive and like my basics, and then also things that just make me feel good, things I just enjoy. But it's important to do both of those things. So one like self-care thing that's more of a basic is like deep breathing. I really focus on mindful breathing if I'm in like a stressful situation or just having a bad day. I don't know. There's lots of different breathing techniques. You can find ones that work for you. One's like 4 seconds of breathing in, then you hold your breath for 2 seconds, and then you spend 4 seconds like breathing out. That's one that's like really simple, but really like keeps me calm if I'm in a moment of distress. So yeah, like as simple as it sounds, like focusing on your breathing is a self-care technique for me. As well as like drinking water throughout the day. Seems so basic, but it just truly makes my body feel good and then my mind feel good as well. And then eating food, finding food that's like tasteful to me, something that brings me joy. And it's not an easy thing. You know, people struggle with eating food in our world. And so it's like really basic, but also like really, really important to be able to nourish yourself through food, water, and breathing. And then in addition to those like basic things, there are things that are more subjective to me, but things that like I have to center in my life because they make me feel so good. So one big thing is music. Like I'll listen to so much music just in a single day, like on my drive somewhere, before I go to bed, maybe even as I'm getting ready in the morning. And it's just like a silly thing I do, like listen to pop music or listen to literally anything, just because it makes me feel good. And connected to listening is playing. So I'm not saying I'm like, you know, a Taylor Swift out here, but I play the guitar and I just know some basic chords. I've been playing like most of my life. And playing the guitar is just such a good emotional release for me. You know, if I'm going through something difficult or I'm having a bad day, I just grab my guitar and just strum, play. And like I said, I'm not, you know, a crazy, amazing guitar player, but it is such a good self-care activity for me because I can release my emotions. And also like in a little way, like it's partially physical for me. Like I can strum really hard on my guitar and get out like maybe frustration. Yeah. And so like just playing, just I don't know, letting loose a little bit can help me release my emotions and in a way process my emotions too. So yeah, playing the guitar, but also just centering play, like the idea that like we should just engage in an activity for fun, for enjoyment, not because I'm going to be selling out stadiums and selling out albums. I'm engaging with the guitar because it's just serving myself. Like it's making me feel good and letting me process my life. So doing things like that, like the guitar is an example of how I center play, but also just like sports. I love like playing soccer in my backyard with a friend or playing basketball at my local YMCA. I really love swimming. So whenever I can, I get in the pool and just do some laps. And it's like linking that physical release of like moving my body, movement, and also like a joy. Like I'm someone who finds joy out of running around trying to score or, swimming really hard and seeing how fast I can go. So yeah, like things like that link the physical and emotional health and give me this release in a way. It's just my self-care. Even dance. Sometimes I just dance. Like if I don't have the means of, going out to play a sport or anything, like you can dance anywhere in your world. And I'm not a good dancer, but it's just a physical, emotional release for me. So yeah, basically just overall, I prioritize, those things that keep me alive and keep me calm in moments of crisis, which is the water, the food, the breathing, And then also just making sure I'm living a life where I can center activities that are just playful and for my enjoyment, like sports or dance, or music. So yeah, those are my self-care activities in my life.
I love that. I love that. I love how you separate it out to the difference between the stuff that I need to live and survive versus the fun, because I think we don't think about that enough. You were talking about breathing earlier, box breathing. I do that same thing. I will feel it in my body and I will just stop and do the box breathing just to reset my nervous system. And it comes up in different things. It might be just, I've been on the computer for a while, banging away, working away. And I all of a sudden my chest is tight, and because sometimes the work is a little more intense or I'm trying to figure something out. And so just taking that moment, and I started a thing a couple years ago, and where I I would set an alarm so that every hour I would stop and just do that for a couple of minutes, because I didn't realize how much my body was seizing up, especially when I was working a 9-to-5 job where I was like, all of a sudden I'd be like, whoa, okay. So I love that you brought that up. And also the food and the water. Like, I don't think we give enough credit to the fact that of how we feed ourselves affects how we feel. And we get busy with our days and we don't prioritize our meals. We just grab the quickest thing because we're in such a rush. And then we feel like why do I feel like crap at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock? I'm falling asleep at my desk. Well, how have I fed my body throughout the day? So I'm so glad you talked about that, because we sometimes, those are the basics, they don't count. No, they do count. Those are like, you got to start there with your self-care. And doing that well. And then I loved how you talked about, the music and the fun piece. And that's something that's interesting, because both my husband's therapist and my therapist, I'm like, y'all need to have some fun. That means that doesn't have any other meaning but having fun. It doesn't have to have any, like, we're so caught up in this list and everything has to have a meaning attached to it. And they're like, no, you need to do it because it's fun. And for no other reason, because of the release. And I think because of the world we live in, and, with the kind of work that you're involved with, you got to have that space. That's what fills your hope and your energy so that you're able to do the things you want to do in the world. So I'm so glad I love how you separated that out, but how they all have such an important meaning. So thank you for sharing that.
I totally agree with what you said, 100%. And I'm not saying it's easy, as silly as it is hard to like focus on having fun because we live in this world. But something like maybe some advice I might have, or a way that like something that helps me when I'm feeling down, because it's inevitable that we'll feel down, is like having a physical list of these things written down. Like, hey, reminder, Jenna, you love to swim. Or hey, reminder, you love to dance. And so like, sometimes when I forget, or if I get down in a hole, like having that reminder, like, hey, you like to dance is really, really nice to me. So having like a self-care reminder list, also just having a list of things that like keep me grounded in my life. I found that is really, really helpful. A list of things that ground me. And then even if you want to take it one step further, like a list of affirmations or like things that I love about myself, because it's easy to get down on myself or things like that. But if I have these 3 lists, which I have them on like Post-it notes, really accessible, self-care, things that ground me, and things I love about myself. Like, I don't know, just little advice I have of like what keeps me kind of going is having those reminders.
That's great. That's so great. Have it in that place where you can see it each day, whether it's your mirror in your bathroom or your mirror in your car, or where you're on your briefcase, or whatever it is, that place that you find it. I love that. It's really, really good advice. Let's talk about confidently setting boundaries. Talk to me about your boundaries journey, how that's worked for you. If that's been hard, if that's something you're working on, talk to me about that.
I didn't touch on this, but I think like setting boundaries is also part of self-care. Yeah, for sure. And I'm not the best at this. Like, it's kind of a difficult thing to do. And I've set boundaries and then had those boundaries violated before in the past. So it's like, it's really tough when you have experiences like that, which I'm sure many, many, many people have. So I think like it's really important because this is a difficult topic to have friends or community, honestly, to have a therapist to talk to about this, because it's not an easy situation, but having people you can talk to about setting boundaries has really helped me like process my own boundaries. But it is really, really important, because this is how we let people know like what's okay, and like what is making me feel good, and then what is not okay, and what's not making me feel good. So it's really important to do. And so for setting boundaries, I need to like remind myself that like I know my body best. I'm the one experiencing things. Like I'm in control of what my body does. I'm in control of like choosing where I want to be and where I want to go. And so I think that's the first step almost, is like building this self-confidence that I'm in charge of me. I know myself best. And like I said, I'm a really passionate person, and I feel my emotions in my body. And so like when I feel something, I need to trust that like this is a real thing I feel. I'm not making it up, or I'm not just being sensitive, which are like things that the world kind of tells us sometimes. It's like, oh, like you should not have this boundary because, you know, you don't deserve to have that boundary. But it's not true at all. You do deserve, you know, if you're feeling something and you're like, everyone loves hugs, but I don't like hugs. You know, that's just an example. Like, that's okay.
No,
because you know that.
I have a daughter that's the same way. Yeah. And it's like, it's okay for you to say, like, that's just not something that is welcoming to me. Please don't assume that it is welcoming to everybody. Yeah, I think that's a great example.
So, so I guess, like, it really is building that self-confidence that, like, you are the one who's allowed to say what's okay, what's not okay. And then also, I think a really big part of it is, like, teaching others, too, that just to be aware of this, that everyone's in charge of what's okay for them. And so as much as, like, you're allowed to dictate what you want to do with your body, like, others, you know, have that same right. And so it's kind of like almost like teaching others about consent is a really big part of setting boundaries, because it's like, you know, we need to educate everyone on like that fact that we should respect people's boundaries and be mindful when we're putting things on other people, that they might have a different comfort level for things that we do. And that's like amazing. That's like the beautiful part of being human, is that we have these layers and these different sensitivities and these different feelings in our bodies, and we don't know what someone's going through. We really don't. So that's a big part of setting boundaries too, is being aware that other people have boundaries, and being okay if you know, we do overstep or put something on someone, being, you know, ready to have that conversation with a friend or with someone that like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I gave you this hug and you didn't want it. And being okay to have those difficult conversations too.
Yeah, because I think something that's so important, you've so many good points there, because it's one thing to like put out there, this is my boundary, but then you've got to like enforce it when it gets, and sometimes that can be really uncomfortable, and you get caught up in the like, am I being rude? No. You communicated the boundary. At the same time, it's important to communicate the boundaries, because people are not mind readers. So we have to communicate those boundaries in order. And then also, once you've done that, being comfortable with like, you know, as we talked about before, this is, you know, I don't have the time for that this week, or personal touch is not something that is, you know, I'm comfortable with just anybody, and, you know, those kinds of things. But also when you do that, I think it also sends a message to other people of like, oh, she has boundaries that she's asking to respect. It's okay for me, you know, to have those boundaries too, because the consent thing's a big thing, and it's not respected, you know, broadly, especially just in the broad context, and not being offended. Like if someone has set a boundary and you've violated that, whether you just forgot or you're not used to having boundaries and you don't understand them, whatever it is, it's not a personal thing. That is something that's important to them. And just maybe try to put yourself on that person's shoes and be like, well, wait a minute, what are those things that are uncomfortable for me? And if you haven't communicated those to other people, that's not the person who has boundaries' fault. I mean, I think it can be really hard sometimes too to communicate boundaries to people who have no boundaries because they don't understand it, and not feeling like the person with boundaries feeling uncomfortable with like, I have boundaries. It's important for me. It's your choice whether you decide to have them or not, but that doesn't make my boundaries less important. Or,
that's so true. And just being okay with like, apologizing if you do overstep, or, knowing that it's not the friendship's over because, my friend communicated a boundary. No, like they're communicating that boundary because it's important to them and they don't want it to happen again. And being okay having that conversation is really important, but can let you like move forward and go deeper into your relationship or something. So
absolutely. Because I think a lot of times we communicate boundaries because we care about the relationship and we don't want to have those hidden feelings of mistrust or irritation when someone crosses a boundary, but we've never communicated it to them. We want that relationship to be honest and safe. So I think that's an important thing to remember too. Thank you so much for that. You've talked about this a little bit earlier, but we're going to touch back onto it. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. You really hit on this well when we talked about self-care, where you talked about how when you're doing that physical activity, it's taking care of two things. It's dealing with a physical need you have to work something out, but it's also helping you emotionally and mentally. Have you always been aware of that, or is that something you've learned over time?
Ooh, yeah, I don't think I was aware of it, but I was practicing it. So I've been involved in sport. I've played the guitar since I was 10, and I didn't realize, the significance of it in the moment. But, growing up, I was in really dark places at times. And for some reason, the guitar would help bring me out of this. And again, I'm not a great guitar player, but it really, really has like been amazing for my life that I can, do that because it's a physical strumming and it's the emotional release. And then same with sports. I did every sport under the sun as I was a little kid. And I'm thankful that I had, parents who allowed me to do that and resources where I could. But same thing there. I just was going through tough times with friends at school or trying to make sense of myself and my identity, especially my queer identity. And it was just making me so sad. And so I felt so upset. And going to swim practice and just releasing, my frustrations, my anger, and then also, processing that while I'm swimming. I've been doing that since I can remember, but I don't think I actually understood that significance. Honestly, until college when I started taking some psychology classes and you were not finding by yourself then. Yep. And that's when you really realize like, wow, it is so true. I mean, I truly believe that our bodies and our minds are just connected. There's not this separation. And so, of course, like mental, emotional, and physical health have to be interconnected. So, I love finding those activities that can get my body moving and also just make me feel good. Yeah.
I know. I understand what you mean. I mean, I will sometimes I'll get my best, freshest ideas sometimes when I'm on a really vigorous workout, whatever that might be, because I've cleared everything out. Like I've removed whatever tension was in my body from the day. I've kind of cleared my head. And I find, this happened a couple of days ago. I went on a really brisk walk. I came back and did some yoga and stretch. And I had to get on my computer right after I was done to write down all the things that I thought about, because I had the mind space. I'd cleared it out, had the mind space. I'd worked it out mentally, emotionally, physically. And if you don't do those things, it will show up in other ways. So I think it's so important. And I played all the sports as a kid too that were available. My kids did too. And, I think it's one of those things you do learn kind of early on. I mean, for me, running became a therapy session for me. Before I knew therapy was something that was important, I would work a lot of things out on my runs. Track was my favorite sport, and I worked a lot of stuff out on my runs in high school and college. And so I think it's, and understanding that connection, I think is so important. And it's helpful when you have those habits in place already, and then you're able to put together, wait a minute, I don't just need to do this for my physical health. I need to do it for my mental and emotional space.
Yes.
I think is so important too.
Absolutely. And I think also a big lesson I learned too was the importance of therapy. Like I've been going to therapy on and off throughout my entire life too. So it's of course these sports and these ways that I myself can process my emotions. But at the same time, like I can't emphasize enough how like important therapy is. I'm a big supporter of like everyone needs therapy because it's a tough world that we're living in and we all need help. And why not have like a trained professional help you with that? But I know not everyone has access to that. So something that does help me in times where I don't have access to a therapist is just journaling. That's just an easy way to like process your emotions more. Going on runs or swims and thinking, processing. And there's also a cool self-therapy app that I use if I'm not in therapy at the time, and it's called Youper. Youper.
And that'll be in the sources, people, if you guys want to look it up, and we'll put that in our sources. Okay.
So, that's something that's helped me throughout my life.
I love that. Yeah, because I think sometimes we have to remember too that I think it's important to remember finding those things self-care wise at work, but also realizing the privilege that's locked into that. And so if I don't have the financial means or the time, I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, what are those things I can do? And it doesn't have to be, you did a really good job earlier when you talked about the breathing, and these don't have to be things that take a lot of time. Just make sure you find that thing. It might be going on a walk around the block at your house, in the morning before you go to work or when you get home or after dinner. It might be just listening to that favorite music and jamming out on the way home from work. But finding that space, but also realizing as we're recommending these things that there is some privilege locked into that. And so, look at the resources. We'll have sources in there that are for everybody, and we'll list these things so that you all can have access to that. How can we support ourselves and others in living unapologetically? You hit on something earlier when we were talking about your character traits. You're compassionate and empathetic, and you see their struggle is my struggle, and you advocate for that. And you advocate in the queer community, but you advocate, period, for just things that you care about. So talk to me about how you support yourself in that, but also others in that, because I think you do it. Like your life is an example of that, but talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely like, I truly believe a big part of self-care is like community care in a sense. I think community care, advocating for your rights, but the rights for others as well. So I don't know, we live in a world where lots of people are oppressed. Trans and non-binary and queer people, especially currently, are being attacked legally in the United States. And so like, I just can't help. I can't stop myself from not like, I have to be involved in advocating for queer, trans, non-binary people, my right to exist and experience, a full life of all these things we've been talking about, a full life of joy and things that make me feel good. And, others deserve to experience that too. And so advocating for trans, non-binary, queer, and other marginalized people of every kind to just have that right to experience life as I want to experience it. I think is so, so important, and is truly like, as a queer person, it is self-care, advocating for yourself, advocating for your community. Because there's people out there who are trying to, restrict or oppress. And so it is self-care to fight for your rights, just straight up.
Well, and I think when you do that, it invites other people to do that in. I think that that's where the community really comes in. I mean, of coming together and like, come alongside me. Let's do this together. Let's fight together. Let's believe in each other together. Let's create a safe world that we all want to live in together. I think another thing that goes into that, and this is something my mother-in-law used to say to my kids when they were little, is we fear the things we don't understand. We fear the things we don't know. And so also an invitation to other people, learn. This is, learn. If you don't understand what it's, there's certain things that I can never understand. I am a white, cisgendered, heterosexual woman, and I cannot understand what it's like to walk in your shoes, but I can learn. I can listen. I can listen and participate and hear the stories and believe that's your experience and know that there are multiple experiences in the world. And value as a human, I value my rights to choose to live the way I choose to live. Why would I not want you to have the same thing? But I think that, it's really just challenging people to learn about what you don't understand instead of making assumptions and judgments. Get in there and learn. Get to know some people that have a different experience than you, whatever that experience is, whether it's what we're talking about right now in identities, whether it's a faith experience, whether it's someone from a different ethnicity or cultural background. Learn about it so that you can help, we can all support each other in living unapologetically so that we have a world where we all feel safe doing that and respect everyone else's right to do that. And, for people who are like, whatever it is you don't agree or disagree with, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about respect. Not everybody's going to like everybody. Not everybody's going to agree with everybody's choices, but everybody has that right to live safely as they desire to be living.
And I totally feel you. And the sense of like my self-care, those things that bring me joy, dancing, music, playing sports, I truly believe like everyone deserves the right to find things that bring them joy. And so like some of my work experience has been a little relevant to our conversation now. Like I worked last summer at a summer camp for kids, and just allowing the kids to run around, play soccer, or climb the climbing wall, swim. Like it was just beautiful to see kids allowed to experience joy and just pleasure and fun. And like that was really important for me. And this upcoming summer, I'm going to be working at a different camp. And I'm really excited for it, to continue to allow kids to do that. But this camp is more it's specifically for trans, non-binary, and queer kids. And I think like that just adds an extra layer to it that, we live in a world where certain powers don't want certain types of people to experience joy. And so it's just really, really radical to, I'm really excited for this summer because I'm going to embrace and encourage, trans, non-binary kids to be a kid and experience those fun things that are just for our own enjoyment and something I think like all people deserve to experience. So looking forward to that.
And I think you're going to be amazing at that. I think that's such important work right now. But if you
thank you.
So thank you for doing that. And those kids are going to be lucky to know you. I think that you and I talked about this before we started recording, and the fact that we lose sight, we get so caught up, especially as people, as kind of the power dynamic of white heterosexual. We get so caught up in how somebody identifies that we lose sight of them as a person. They're people. You love to music and guitar and dancing. So do I. I love music. I love dance parties. I'm a 53 or, you and I, if you put us on paper, don't look like we should have a lot in common, but we both we love music. We both played sports as a kid growing up. We both understand what those are important. We're people. And so don't get so locked up in these, not that these identities are important, but we don't let that lose sight of the fact they're people. That is a part of them. Respect that and let them be that, but also don't miss all that they are as a human,
Yes, absolutely.
And that common humanity within that of like, we can respect each other's differences. And that doesn't, we just spend so much time othering instead of appreciating, respecting, understanding, and just embracing and giving and allowing people the same freedoms that we want for ourselves.
Yes, because we truly are we have these layers. We are multifaceted people with different identities. I'm white, non-binary, grew up in rural Pennsylvania. There's just so many layers to me.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful when we can embrace the multifaceted parts of our identities and not reduce us to just one single label.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values and everything you do. And I think you've got a pretty clear-cut understanding of what those are. Talk to me about how you got there and how that frames where you put your time and energy.
Yeah, for sure. Like strengthening my sense of self has been, a long journey, but really, really rewarding because I do feel like I know what I care about and I know, I know who I am a little bit. So I think my passion, compassion, advocacy, these are my core values. And a big key part of my core value is also that I'm always growing, always changing, always open to fluidity in the sense that I know I'm not going to stay the same person. I will always have those core values of passion, compassion, advocacy, but also allowing myself to change a little bit as I grow. And then sometimes, a little bit more difficult. Sometimes I act in ways that don't align exactly with my values. And that's when I really know I have to reevaluate what I'm doing or maybe apologize to someone and say, you know what, I just acted in a way that was not compassionate. I didn't understand, even though I care about being compassionate, I'll admit we're not perfect human beings. And so I do act outside of my values. But just the fact that I know those are my values allows me to do that apology or allows me to almost call myself out in a sense. So it's important to maybe journal about your core values and what you care about, strengthen your sense of self, so that you can really just live the life that you want to live and create a world that you want to live in. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love it because I loved how you talked about your values. And I think that's so important because those values are the core that you carry, but the things you fight for and decide for and are passionate about will change throughout your life.
Yes, that's it. That's true.
So you've got that value set. But I think it's so important when you do have those values, you bump into something, when you're out of alignment, you can feel it in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. So I think it's, and I think really keeps us in check too. That's so important. So thank you for talking about that. Living out of your own expectations versus others. I'm sure you could talk about this alone for an entire episode.
Whole podcast, yeah,
100%. So talk to me about that because that's hard. It's hard in a world that doesn't always feel safe, or doesn't ever feel safe, depending on where you're at and what. And who you're interacting with. So talk to me about that. Because I think, you talked about earlier in the episode, kind of the importance of having those sports and having those things as you were a kid, trying to figure out who you were. And because our education spaces don't allow for full conversations about that. And even as well-intentioning as our parents are, we're still, as parents, I can speak to this as being a parent myself. As parents, we're conditioned to believe that we will have these children, and some will be boys and some will be girls, and they'll all be heteronormative, and that's how it will be. And there's no preparation or discussion for any fluidity within that. That's just not what the culture has done. So as a kid, you're figuring yourself out. You're trying to figure out, where am I safe? And are the people in my life that I love the most, are they safe? Not that they wouldn't mean to be, but anyway, like I said, we talk about this all day.
We both could talk about this forever.
So talk to me about living out of your own expectations versus others.
Yeah. Like, this is not easy at all. Like, the simple answer is, like, it doesn't matter what anyone says. Like, you, but it's too simple, because there are systems of power out there that give us expectations about how we have to live our life. And as well-intentioned as people are, I think these larger powers do impact our lives and what we expect from others. So, it doesn't have a simple answer. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned, in a way to truly start living a life where I can give the simple answer, and I can be more confident in myself and say, like, you know what, like, you expect this from me, but I know me best. Like, my advice would be just what we already talked about earlier in this episode, is that you truly do know your body best. You are in control of how you present yourself into this world. Building self-confidence to allow yourself to trust yourself. That was a lot, but trusting yourself, trusting your gut. I don't know. I try to remind myself it doesn't matter what other people say or what other people think, but it's difficult to do. But it's what you have to do. Trust your gut, trust your instinct. I remember, like, when I was first coming to understand my queer identity, I just kept thinking I was making it up, like that I was for some reason making up my feelings. And it was a really interesting, like, way to come to my queerness. But I've learned that many other queer people feel this way too. They feel like they're not legit enough, or their feelings aren't valid. But the truth is, you know your body, you know yourself. And if you're feeling a certain way, other people genuinely don't know. And maybe they'll never understand you, but you know you best. You might not understand yourself fully, but you do know yourself better than your parents, better than a stranger on the internet, better than anyone else. So that's my only advice, is just keep trying to remind yourself that you know you, and just go with it.
Yeah, I think that self-trust is a big thing, is just, and not listening to all the outside voices and pushing away what you know inside is happening, what you know, who you are, whatever that may be, whatever cycle that looks like you might be breaking, or whatever grain you might be going against. I'm just learning how to trust my inner knowing. There's so many things for years that I didn't fight for because of the spaces I lived in, that I knew within myself that, I would find ways to accommodate, or I would believe that, like, no, that must be something misguided. I can't be right, or I can't be trusted because these outer sources are telling me this other thing. I was, growing up, I grew up in a Mormon religion, and then I went into evangelical spaces for a lot of years. And there were things that I knew in my soul were right, but these other spaces were telling me there was something wrong with that. And so I found myself in this quandary all the time of, like, not fighting for things that in my gut I knew I'm like, no, that, and I'm just now getting to a point where I'm truly finally fighting for the things I'm trusting myself. I'm listening to my heart and my inner knowing for the first time. And I'm 53 years old. So congratulations to you for getting there so much sooner. And you've had a much more complicated journey, I think, than me, just because my identity is more widely accepted in the world than yours is. But I think it's that trusting yourself and not letting those outside spaces automatically giving them the power. If those outside spaces are telling you something that in your gut feels it's like something that isn't adding up, or you're having to justify what you're feeling inside to make it match up with what that outside thing is saying. That's what I would do a lot. And it's just continued to be a clash until I finally just didn't do that. The last 3 to 5 years, I finally like, no, I know what's right. I know what's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let those outside voices, if I'm feeling a conflict within me, that's what I need to know. And I think so much respect to you for your courage and being able to do that in a world that would rather you did not so many times and in so many spaces.
Well, thank you for saying that. That means a lot. And maybe to complicate my answer more, it's trusting yourself and knowing when to say, I'm not going to follow these expectations you have of me. And another big part that has helped me through that is the sense of community, my friends, my community, so that you can tell each other, like, when you're feeling down, it's like, hey, reminder, we're all out here living our true lives and living, as authentically as we can. And, that really helps, is having the sense of community, others standing right next to you saying that. And so it's awesome when others can do that for me. And it goes to my core values of how I want to do that for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You've brought this up a lot throughout the conversation, so that I think this is going to be real easy for you, and we can just touch on it and bring back all this together. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. You've talked about that a lot throughout the episode already. I think you have a really good grasp on that. And for someone your age to have a grasp on that, good job. Because I think we struggle with that as humans. We struggle with that because there's so many parts of ourselves that we're told that aren't acceptable, that people don't want to hear about. We see the shiny stuff. Your generation has had to deal with all the social media, good, bad, horrible, wonderful, all the above about that, and the effect that has had on your mental health. There's all kinds of studies out there about that, and what the world is telling you and what we feel comfortable. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, until you can accept all those layers about yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to prioritize yourself, trust yourself, listen to yourself, make self-care a priority. Because if you're not accepting all those layers of yourself, you're not going to see yourself as the fully intrinsic, messy, beautiful, valuable, complicated human that you are. How did you get to this space that you are in such a healthy way at your age already? Talk to me about that.
Oh, well, thank you so much again. So I went to college in New York. I went to Barnard College, and I studied women, gender, and sexuality studies in college. And in my classes, we honestly learned about like intersectionality and how, you're not something 50% of the time and like something else 50% of the time. You are 100% something 100% of the time, at the same exact time that you are something else 100% of the time. So, understanding it's not this half and half, or this like almost shattered idea of identity. It's more like this interconnected, interwoven identity that happens all at the same time. And so I'll honestly say, like, my time in college, really studying power and identity has really helped me understand myself and the world I live in.
I think that's a beautiful thing, and touches on kind of what we're going into next. In summary, in living out feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, we can feel multiple emotions at the same time. And I think that what we tend to do historically, and I think we're talking about this more, so hopefully as we move forward as humanity, we get better at this, but we feel whatever feeling, emotion, opinion, and we decide which one's going to be the lead and we stuff everything else. Yeah. Instead of realizing I can feel multiple things at multiple times. I have multiple layers to myself all the time. I love what you talked about. Like, I'm 100% all of those things all the time. And that's just how it is. That's the truth. There's no denying it. That's who I am. That's what makes me all that I am. And I think that we can talk about that with our emotions too, but your ability to accept that about yourself and understand that about yourself not only affects your relationship with yourself, I would say it affects your relationship with others. Talk to me about that. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just think that's the beautiful thing, is that we are such complex creatures who have the ability to feel such complex emotions and layers. And I think that's what I want to do with my life, is just dedicate it to accepting all these parts of ourselves and embracing it in others, bringing it out of others, letting people know that that's okay. That's kind of beautiful. That's what makes us amazing creatures, is that we do have this ability to be complex. So let's go. Let's break down these stereotypes or these boxes that just say we can only be one thing or we can only feel one way. There's just so much in my life that I want to really dismantle or break down or destroy. I don't know. I'm passionate, and I just feel like, let's destroy these boxes that say you can only feel angry or sad at once. No, that's not true at all. We are complex, and emotions are complex, and let's embrace that, because I think it just allows us to be more genuine, more open, more free with ourselves, and therefore with each other. We can find better connections with each other if we're just honest about the complexity that we all have. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that.
No, I think that's so true. And something I started doing that helps me with this, I write down each morning in my journal, I write down all that I'm feeling that morning. And that helps me have an understanding of what I'm dealing with today so that I can approach my day accordingly. I know what mindset I'm in. I know all the things I'm feeling. So what do I need to do to foster that, to work through some things, to allow other things to come through better, to, whatever it is I need to do. It comes down to maybe what I feel like I've got the aptitude for that day, what I need to do for my self-care that day. Am I in a good space to be with people that day? Or is this a day I absolutely need to be with people? I mean, all those things. And that's something I think that really helped. It also awoke me to all that I was feeling at one time. Wow. Like an awareness, because I wasn't one who was like, I kind of had a primary emotion and I let that dictate my day and stuffed everything else. I don't think you need this practice. I think you do this naturally very well, but not all of us do. And so if you're looking for something to help you, it's just something that I've found that really helps me each day to have a better understanding of where I'm at.
I love that.
Rapid fire, we're down to the end here. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Ooh, okay. The ones on my mind right now: guitar playing Frisbee, swimming, practicing a language. I just love learning a language. And a basic, eating tasty food. Like, that just nourishes me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, in the next 6 months, I want to feel safe. I want to feel like an openness. I want to feel open. I want to feel joyful, proud. I want to feel proud of myself. And I want to feel like I'm growing.
Yeah. Learning. Well, I think, growing up in that learning environment like you did, that kind of probably comes pretty naturally to you. Jenna, thank you so much for this. This was such an enriching, powerful, authentic conversation. I'm so appreciative of you being willing to take the time and come on with me and have this conversation. Thanks so much to Jessica for referring you. Field Podcast audience. For Jess. Field Podcast audience, like I said earlier, go to embracinglayers.com to find the link to this episode, to find the blog. We talked about a lot of different sources today and things that Jenna does. But Jenna, thanks again so much. Field Podcast audience, I know you may want to go back and listen to this again and take some notes. So much to learn. And, this is our final episode of season 4. We'll be back in September with new episodes, but you can follow us all summer long. We'll be featuring and highlighting past episodes. We'll be doing IG lives with past guests and reintroducing you to those episodes as we hit our 2-year anniversary in July. So don't miss out on any of those things. But take the time to learn. If there's something that scares you or something you don't understand or someone you don't understand, learn more about it and look at the way you feel about it and decide if that judgment or opinion you have on it is based on stuff you know or based on fear and what you've been told. That's my outgoing advice. It's something I've tried to do. I can tell you, by doing that, I continue to learn. And it's also humbling because I realize every day there's so much more I need to learn and so much I need to unlearn as well. So thanks again, Jenna. Podcast audience, have a great summer and we will see you in the fall, but don't miss out on all the great things we have for you coming in July. And thank you for being with us. Have a great July and August, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was an absolute blast. Thank you, Jess, for allowing me to do this, and happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month. Thank you, Jenna.